Hello, hello. It is, I don't even know what day it is anymore. It's February 12th, 2025. And January alone felt like it was 125 days. I don't know if you notice that time seems to be expanding and collapsing in really non-linear ways, right? It just keeps, it's like time is so much is happening at once, and yet so many things are collapsing at the same time. And the teachings that were brought forth from this last, let's say, year of my life were about how do we navigate validation, truth, integrity, and consciousness in a world that seems divided into fallen and Christ-coded architecture. Now, what does that mean? Fallen architecture and Christ-coded architecture. I mean, if we really want to go back into the biblical days of the fallen ones, we are living in a world that is separated. It is separated in dimensions. It is separated into a fallen space and then a Christ-coded architecture. And then we're enmeshed. So it's like there's three worlds that we live in. It's the physical world, the spiritual world, and then the illusion world. And the illusion world is where I would argue 95% of us reside, in this matrix of the mind. And the mind is truly a place and a space that can create realities for your everyday life, right? This can be really simple, as in you wake up today and you feel driven to work on your business plan, but your business plan was turned down last week by a competitor or by somebody that could bring it forward. So you wake up, you're motivated AF, and you're going to work on your business and you're going to work on all of the things. And then your mind steps in and goes, but it didn't work last week. You were turned down. Then that could spiral into you're not good enough. You're not worthy. And then you can go down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out the why you weren't worthy. And then all of a sudden you're not working on the business plan that really could have elevated you into a new place today if you had not listened to the mind. That's the illusion world. That's the world that society and the world is really caught up in. Like the carnal world is caught up in this illusion of the mind, the media matrix, what that is pushing forth, everything that is coming forth through media, through politics, through government regulations, through. When in reality, our validation, truth, integrity, and consciousness needs to come back into our bodies. Our bodies hold the codex for our future. They hold the memories of our past. They hold the present. And they have the capacity to teach us, tell us, and advise us of all of the things that are available to us in this world, which can be really beautiful, but it can be really overwhelming at the same time. So what does all of this mean? Like I see such division in the world outside. Relationships are dissipating. People are aligning with preconceived notions and judgments of friends, of family members, of government regulations, of politics, of media. And all of these things are coming in to our personal field, and then they're creating judgments on how we live our day-to-day, on how we interact and interface with the world around us on our day-to-day. That's not how it should be. Right? Our bodies, again, once they're clear, and how do we clear our bodies? We clear our bodies through self-regulated work, through breath, through feeding our bodies positive words, affirmations, food, real food, water. The way that we treat our bodies is going to determine how we interface with the rest of the world and the information that is streamlining in. So as we're navigating this world and we're outside and people are coming into the field and they're talking and we're hearing this and we're hearing that and we're moving through all of this outside information, external information that's not coming from in here in our heart space, then we have to learn how to discern it. Because deceit, deception, and disconnection is happening all around us. You were born with a purpose. Your organic template is here to fulfill a purpose. God, the one, the creator, gave you a purpose to live in. And then you are thrust into this world with parents, maybe without parents, maybe without support, maybe with a lot of support. And then inevitably, there was some sort of trauma to your system along the way. That's inevitable. We live in a fallen world at birth when we come through. So then we're having to learn in our organism, in our body, in our human, in our child is having to learn how to navigate that as we grow. We have to learn how to navigate the trauma that we are faced with as children as we grow. And if you do not have a parent that is consciously aware in how to show up, hold space, and support you as a child, then you are going to learn templates and you're going to have architectures and downloads put into your system that were not of the heart and not of God because of the environment that you were born into. Therefore, you're already navigating the physical, spiritual world and the illusion world, right? So I see this even in my children today. I have children who are navigating really tough places and spaces. I have children that are having to go from one home to another that have very different styles of parenting, that have very different environments around them, that work in very different energetic fields. So their nervous system is constantly having to go from one familiar space to another familiar space, but it is polar opposite. They are polar opposites in how they are working and navigating in this world. So then as children, we have to learn to keep our bodies safe. So as we learn to keep our bodies safe, sometimes that looks like manipulation of self, manipulation of others. Sometimes it looks like deceit. Sometimes it looks like disassociation. Then that becomes, in the carnal world, mental health. You follow? This all starts at a very young age. And so then how do we navigate that as adults, knowing that we went through it, or knowing that our children went through it, or knowing that our clients went through it, and then help rewind, rewire, and reframe the current today? How do we navigate what validation, truth, integrity, and consciousness means in a fallen world? It's so difficult to navigate when we have been caught up into those matrices, right? Matrices. So how do we drop into the body in order to reframe everything that's happened to us? All of the trauma, all of the injustices, all of the unvalidations, all of the isolation that our human has experienced, that our soul has experienced. How do we remap, rewire, and redo, reframe, and re-elevate ourselves into a positive, coherent, cohesive state so that we can then learn how to respond from a conscious place to the world around us instead of react to the world around us? How do we do that? It's difficult. I'm not here to tell you it's easy. I've been doing this work for a decade and it doesn't get easier. And then sometimes I get thrown even more trials and tribulations that are big. Like my initiations are big. They're huge. And then I have to navigate those. I have been through the fire. God has been working on me so big in this season. So you have to do the dirty work in order to navigate and find all of these things: validation, truth, integrity, and consciousness, to live as an awakened organism, human, to do good, to live in purpose and prosperity and peace. You have to do the dirty work on yourself. What does that mean? Mine started with therapy at a young age. I mean, I had a therapist, I think at 21, and I've worked with a therapist for 20 years. A therapist is great. Not everybody has benefits and the ability to work with therapists. Some have the ability to offer their services on a sliding scale. It is absolutely wonderful to have an external support. Therapy is not easy. You have to face yourself. Therapy is not about getting advice and support. It's about going inside and finding out where you went wrong. Where did you go wrong? So that you can succumb to that and then elevate yourself out of that space. Inner child trauma work. That can be done with a spiritual coach, a life coach. It can be done with a therapist. There are so many ways to do inner child trauma work. And again, it's dirty work. It's not easy. You go back into these points, these pivotal points in your life where you experienced trauma, shame, grief, abandonment, abuse, and that could be ongoing. I argue for many it's ongoing, depending on the situations and environments you have put yourself in or you have landed in for learning, right? You see how the reframe is there? It's like, okay, I put myself in these situations, which could then carry a template of shame, or I landed in these situations for a period of growth because Again, we have to acknowledge why we were in a situation and then how we learn from that situation. Authentic accountability for how we co-create our present and our current and our future realities. We are co-creators in everything we do. And every interface and every interaction that we have, we are co-creating that reality, whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not, nobody is responsible for your behavior. Nobody is responsible for your reactiveness or your response. You can only control your controllables. And so having this radical accountability for self in how we show up in parenting, in partnerhood, in our jobs, as colleagues, as support systems, in every myriad of ways, we have to take radical responsibility of how we show up, how we speak to people, the words that we use, the things that we ignore, how we walk away from interactions that don't serve us, because not every interaction is also going to serve you, right? Just because you say you're sorry and you forgive doesn't mean that another party is going to be sorry and they're going to forgive. And you know what? That's okay, because we are about working with the one and our soul stream, not everybody else's. We have to work on our soul stream and how it is going to flow and navigate through this world. More and more people are waking up, rather, into this spiritual place and space. So physical world again, spiritual world illusion. We want to get out of the mind into the bodies, physical and spiritual bodies, to be able to then interface with everything that is happening around us, because it is enmeshed. The physical and spiritual world are enmeshed. What spiritual eyes are we working with and under what provision? It should only be under the provision of the one, of God. Because that is the only place where we can take guidance in our spiritual growth, is through the eyes of our Creator. And how we navigate that. Anything else, you are working in portals of darkness that you don't want to be involved in. You do not want to be working in different dark sorcery portals when you are working with the spiritual world. That's why the spiritual world and spiritual ethics and spiritual hygiene and spiritual education are so important, and where you are receiving that information from. Access to the other side is always there. We see, again, the fallen world out there. We see murder, we see abuse, we see injustices, we see innocent people imprisoned. And then we see people who are always breaking the law or always doing awful things, running free. And navigating how the systems are showing up or lack thereof, again, takes a really big discernment to see the realities of the ways that the worlds are working. And I say worlds because we live in many worlds all at once. You see people loosely using the word narcissist and calling other people narcissists. And then you see people using mental health and all these derangements and deceptions and perversions happening, where this like darkness is attacking the light, which we know happened in biblical days, and we know that it happens. But at the end of the day, we also know that God wins, right? We know that God wins. We know that evil will fail. We also know the obedience to the one and how important it is to live in integrity, validation, truth, and pure consciousness. To show up always with a heart posture that is open to receive love, to receive accountability, to receive acceptance of self, to receive healing, to listen to the hard things sometimes that we don't want to listen to because they activate something within inside of us. So how do we collapse that darkness and living in that matrix and living in that illusion world that we spoke about, the mind? How do we collapse that out? Again, spiritual work and physical work, they go hand in hand. In order to set up your field so that you are not living in density and you're living in a more light, fractals of light, I guess is the best way that I can explain it, how I see it, so that we're not living in density. How do we set up our field to do that, physical and spiritual? What we consume, what our physical eyes watch and receive, how we speak, and then how we interpret language. Did you notice sometimes if you're having a conversation with somebody, you're speaking and their interpretation of what you're speaking is so perverted And when I say perverted, I mean upside down. It's not what you are relaying, because your heart posture, and it's because you're living in different dimensions. You're not living in the same place that people can understand the heart posture you're giving, because they're living in their war trauma or their trauma loops or their inner child trauma, and they've not done any of the work, so they're never going to understand what you are saying. It's just, they're not going to. We can pray for them, but they're not going to. So setting up our physical field, you have to treat your body well. Meditation, breath work, working out, fitness, walking, stretching, all of the things that are going to treat your body well is really important. And I would argue mandatory for how we are navigating living in a world that's divided. Our human body is a beautiful organism, and it needs to be treated as such. Big pharma, not going to help you. I do believe there is a place and time for acute medical care, absolutely. But longevity and long-term and feeling young and vitality is all brought to you by the earth's medicine, herbal medicines. The earth is a supply of wonder, and we have to be able to rely on those things. Eating food that God created, that's not inserted with all of these drugs and chemicals that are not meant to be in our body, because that is going to drop you down into a density of the fallen world, right? Of the fallen places and fallen spaces. We need to activate and lift ourselves up. And so nutrition and the proper herbs, the proper vitamins, and all of those things that come from food and come from sunlight and come from walking in the snow, putting your feet in water, going in the mountains and hiking, touching the trees. All of these things are going to feed the physical organism into activating a place where you can live in the space that's Christ-coded architecture rather than the fallen world, right? Drugs are a no-no. And again, there's bad drugs, and then there's good earth medicine. I will always argue that there's good earth medicine. We look at the effects and the outcomes of cannabis and all of those things that are happening for us right now, and how they're taken into play, and how they're helping people with cancer and all of these things rather than chemotherapy. Again, I'm not arguing acute medical care is not important. I am stating how we treat our physical organism is going to bring you into the Christ-coded architecture of living, that dimension, or you can be divided into the fallen. And then on top of that, your spiritual hygiene. Where are you getting your spiritual care? Is it from attending a church? Is it from, I mean, there's so many, and I don't even want to get into that because it can be so complex, but spiritual hygiene is so important. You will see that I navigated a very long spiritual journey, one that started out and I was not working with the one. I was using tarot cards and I was using all of these things, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew I was accessing the other side. And then as my channel became more pristine and clear, because I started working with God and God only, the revelations became prominent. The prophecies, you couldn't argue because they were prophetic, right? As I used to identify or call myself a psychic or whatnot, and I wasn't working with the architecture of God. And then you're pulling cards and then you're creating all of these things, and that's not of God. Now, can I sit with an oracle deck, pray over it, bless it, and then receive revelation from the one and that channel of angelics? Yes. And that's what gives me prophecy. Spiritual hygiene. It took me years to figure it out. It took me years to figure it out. And I was not playing in the right realms. We can only work under the provision of God. That is it. That is all. So spiritual hygiene, provision of God. Period. Right? It's that's it. It's simple. It's not easy. That journey is in itself not easy. And now, are there different names for our God? Yes. But God is creator of all. Creator. He is the way. He is the truth. He is the light. And so the more we get to know that spiritual side of things, the more we will align in the physical, spiritual world and stay out of the illusion world. It's not a place to play games, because it can wreak havoc on your life. And it might seem like you're winning at the time. But God's karma is real. God's righteousness is real. God's justice is real. And you need to be sure that you know what you're doing when you are out there casting spells and hexes and all of these things on people and your wishes and using these words, rather than praying, blessing, forgiving, loving, trying to understand, and then putting yourself in and under those provisions of spiritual hygiene. Meditation and talking to the One, talking to Creator, asking Holy Spirit to come into your life to teach you the things that you need to know. Journaling and going into revelation of yourself rather than revelation of others. So spiritual hygiene becomes its own level of mastery that you are going to continue to work on. That is how we come back into integrity. And that's what brings us back into a level playing field. It's when we start to treat this human organism the way that we were supposed to be treated. When we can let the outside world talk about us and pass judgment and create all these fabrications and stories and realities about us that people know nothing about anymore, because every day you have the opportunity to change, to show up, to be different. Every day you have the opportunity to be a new version of you, a better version of you, a more integral version of you, to speak with validation and to understand, but it all comes with alignment and alignment of the integrity. So as we come back into integrity, we have to really then dive into like the 10 commandments of the Creator. Thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not steal. You know what? We have all made mistakes, and then we ask for forgiveness until we make another mistake, and then we learn and we grow. Come back into integrity. Do not let the outside world conform your thoughts and take you out of this place. Don't let the outside world conform your thoughts and take you out of purpose. There are lots of modalities and ways that we can work with the light fractures of the body, and that comes with the medicine that I do offer. It comes in the containers that I offer, the life coaching that I offer. This was a very brief Cole's Notes on how we can develop that physical and spiritual health to work and expand our field, to receive abundance, to work in a nonlinear way, to receive the magic of the world that we are so here to inherit, so that we're not living in that density. We're not living in the war. We're not living in the politics. We're not living in the scarcity. We're not living in the stress and the anxiety and the depression and all the things that are not here for you. The last year, I almost collapsed in all of the things until I remembered, and I had to dig deep. And now coming out on the other side has brought me to a new level of coherence. And again, we can't control the people around us and their perceptions. We can't control the stories and the narratives that people are going to tell themselves about you, your decisions, your future, your life. None of it exists. Illusion world, that's their illusion, their delulu. Like that is their delusional world, and that's okay. So we remove ourselves from that field, going back to all of the ways that I just shared, right? In the physical and spiritual hygiene. I really hope that this plants a seed for you. Plants a seed for you to start inquiring about the mysteries of the world and the beauty of God, and how you may be mistreating yourself or mistreating your child, or mistreating your inner child rather, not your child, I hope. You know, if you asked yourself, your younger self, for coffee 10 years ago, if you put yourself 10 years, you rewind in your mind 10 years, and you go and sit with yourself for coffee now, what wisdom do you have to share with yourself, with that version of you that no longer exists? Imagine yourself 10 years down the road. Where do you want to be? Who do you want to be with? How do you want to show up for yourself? Again, because the outside world doesn't matter. This is what matters. That's it. I love you. I hope this serves you. I pray a beautiful covering over your day, for today, tomorrow, for the future, that you collapse out any timelines that no longer serve you, that there are activations happening in your mind, body, and soul systems, your soul stream, that will lead you to places and spaces that you can only dream of.